Hi, my name is Ted Smith, and I am a best-selling author and a relationship coach. And today I want to talk about my experience in a 15-year unhealthy relationship and the last 5 years that I've been out of that relationship, and the healing and the expansion and the love and the joy that I've gotten to experience throughout that journey, and how I'm now just seeing things with a brighter light and a higher perspective. Um, I was in that unhealthy relationship for 15 years, and I smile because I've started this story so many times in the last 5 years. I even wrote a book, Healthy Me, Happy We, Transforming Relationships with Yourself and Others. And I've grown and healed and shifted a lot of stuff since writing that book a few years ago as well. So I want to talk about all of that. And it's just it part of the reason I'm inspired to talk about this today is that so much has shifted for me in terms of my perspective and how I see that relationship now as compared to when I did a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, and certainly when I was in the relationship. Um, and I share this in hopes that it'll be helpful for someone that either might be freshly out of a really challenging relationship or who might also be on a healing journey from having experienced abuse or addiction or codependency, to let you know that there is light on the other side of things when we can really focus on loving ourselves and kind of getting to the truth of who we are. And really, that relationship has been such a catalyst for me in getting to where I am today. And now I'm so grateful for it, because of all that has come from that experience. It's not something that I would want to repeat by any means in this human life and experience. Um, but I can just see how much gold and how many amazing gifts came from that experience. So, at a high level, if you want more details, you can check out my book. um, we were together 15 years. We got together when I was 17. So, until I was 32, it was the only adult relationship I'd ever experienced and I'd ever known. So, in a lot of ways, I didn't know better. I didn't know what relationships could look like. I didn't know what a healthy relationship was or what it involved. I only knew what I experienced in that relationship. And it was really easy for me during the relationship and shortly after it ended for me to put so much blame onto him, because of the way he treated me, which he did have responsibility for the, verbal, emotional, even sexual abuse that he put onto me. But more and more, having been out of that relationship, I'm seeing like the responsibility and the role that I played in that relationship, enabling the behavior, not really setting boundaries, mainly because I didn't know how. I didn't know what boundaries were for a long time. Um, and it grew to a point that like once I finally started going to therapy after I hit rock bottom in that experience, in the last 3 months of our relationship, I started going to Al-Anon, which is 12-step recovery work, as well as therapy. And I began to get like the beginnings of self-love and like boundaries and what those were. And at that point, things were so extreme in our relationship that, the boundaries that I tried to set just were not respected or honored at all. So it had kind of reached a point where it was past the point of no return, if you will. Um, but it was a slow burn. So, I think one of the misperceptions, misconceptions that some people who haven't been in an abusive relationship are like, well, why didn't you just leave when things got bad? And it didn't start off bad. It started off great. And it's not like one day things just got awful. It was a very slow and gradual introduction of these patterns and behaviors that eventually just became normal life for us of how we talk to each other and how I felt on a day-to-day basis. And again, it was like so ingrained in my life that I had this tunnel vision where I didn't know what else was out there. Um, I didn't know what else was possible. And ultimately, subconsciously, like underneath all of that, which I didn't realize at the time, but in the course of my healing over the last 5 years, I've come to see that I didn't feel worthy of anything better. I didn't feel like I could attract or create anything better. And I'm also seeing now where I fully believe that the relationships that we have with other people in our lives are a direct reflection of the relationship that we have with ourselves. And so the way he talked to me and treated me was an exact mirror of the thoughts that I had about myself in my own head, calling myself stupid, calling myself an idiot, getting frustrated and impatient with myself on a regular basis. Really unkind, um, unloving thoughts toward myself. And I really didn't take care of myself either. Um, and so it made perfect sense that, you know, I was willing to tolerate those sorts of things from him because I was doing that to myself. And one of the things that I learned in the course of my therapy journey was like the level at which that we're willing to tolerate abuse or um, harmful behavior from other people is at that same level of what we do to ourselves. And once we kind of lower that threshold for ourselves, we then start to see where, oh, that kind of relationship where that kind of behavior is happening, that's not going to work for me. And that's when we start to either set boundaries or distance ourselves. And that's exactly what happened for me. So 15 years into the relationship, his alcoholism had gotten so bad that he ended up in the ICU for a week. And it was a horrific experience that I wouldn't wish on anyone. Um, but now I'm so grateful that that happened because it was finally the wake up call that I needed to realize that my life was not working anymore. This relationship was not working, and as it was, and I began to get help for myself. So that's when I started the Al-Anon meetings and going to therapy. Um, and so, yeah, it's like it's interesting how these things happen because as horrific as that week was, I'm now so grateful that it happened because in my world where I was so ingrained in this for 15 years and things like progressively got worse to where a normal day was pretty awful by many people's standards. But for me, it was just daily life. Um, that kind of steady medium level of awful, if you will, um, wasn't gonna lead to me like waking up and realizing that things needed to change for myself. It took something even more catastrophic and awful and like worthy of a blockbuster movie um for me to like have wide eyes open and realize, okay, what the heck is going on in my life? I need to do something. I need to hop into the driver's seat of my own life, stop letting life happen to me, and for me to begin to get help and not experience that anymore. Um, and within 3 months, I had gained enough like self-awareness and building love for myself that that threshold had shifted for me where I was no longer willing to tolerate that. And when I saw that this was not going to change on his part, I made the choice, the loving choice for myself to end our relationship. And because of the way things were happening with his alcoholism and his behavior at the time, I chose to cut off all contact with him. I never spoke to him again directly. Um, and we began to live apart. And it was about 9 months later that we were officially divorced. So yeah, that's kind of the story. A lot of which is captured in my book in bigger detail. And like I said toward the beginning, like especially during the relationship and as well, like immediately after, um, I felt and directed a lot of blame at him for the things he said, for the kind of situation that he put himself in with his alcoholism. Um, and I had a lot to learn in terms of my ownership and my role in the relationship. And one of the things that I learned from my therapist was it's shifting the language from I was in an abusive relationship to I participated in an abusive relationship. I had a role in that as well. And it was really easy for me to like kind of play the victim role without taking ownership that I was making decisions every single day to allow the behavior to continue and to stay in that relationship. And I want to give myself some grace and kindness because there's a lot that I didn't know. I didn't know that life could be better. I was not aware of how abusive and problematic my own thoughts were in my own head and how they contributed to the problem and to our dynamic. And once I began to see these things, like things began to shift for me. And I made a very loving choice for myself for sure. And I began to see where separating us was actually a very loving choice for him as well. Because if we had continued the way we were going, I could see how things were only going to continue getting worse for his health and his emotional state, etc. Um, so that was one of the things that I really shifted in the early part of my healing journey was, taking more responsibility for my role in the relationship. Um, and as things have shifted from there, it's like I reached a greater space of compassion and forgiveness for my ex-husband as well. Um, Not in a way that justifies the behavior or makes it okay what he did and said to me, but getting to a place where I began to understand more where it came from. And again, my role and how that contributed to the dynamics that we had and how it was not just one-sided on his part. Um, and a lot of that compassion and forgiveness came from a deeper place within my body. It was not something that I could intellectualize. And that has been a really big theme for me in my healing journey is learning how to get out of my head and more into my heart and into my body. It's a very common experience, a very common opportunity that I see for a lot of people because we grow up, many of us grow up being told that we need to push down our emotions or tone them down, that emotions make other people uncomfortable. So we need to shove them aside, forget about them, um, and certainly not show emotions to other people. Um, and that creates challenges. Um, I think the world would be a vastly different place if it were um, welcomed for people to feel and express their emotions and knew how to do that. It's also something that many of us, it's not like it was part of the curriculum in school, and it's not something that our parents or grandparents knew how to do. Um, there's a lot of trauma and suppression that has been passed down in generations. And it seems like in the world today, more and more people are waking up into the importance of feeling our feelings, um, and freedom of expression when it comes to emotions. But because of how things have been, that then translates to pushing ourselves down. And for me, like I very much became kind of a robot, an intellectual robot, where most of my awareness was like from here up, where I would like very much just operated from my head. And I had little to no awareness of my heart, my body, my emotions. It was all very turned off. And so when I began therapy and coaching, like I began to get this exposure and awareness of like what it even means to get into your body, to get out of your head into your body. I didn't even know what that meant, to start with. And for someone who might be watching who doesn't know what that means, it's a little hard to explain because it's not something that we can necessarily like teach in a textbook per se. It is more experiential. Um, and it's something that, because I am so passionate about and how important it's been in my life, I've become really skilled at helping people, guide people through that kind of experience. Because what happens is when we shove our emotions down and suppress them, the energy of that becomes stuck inside our body, and it sits there for years and decades. And that's why sometimes when we might get triggered in our day-to-day life, this like whole onslaught of emotions might come to the surface, whether it's anger or sadness, that like may seem inexplicable. Like, where the heck is this coming from? Like, all he did was say he didn't like the shirt I was wearing. Like, why am I so upset about this? And it's because that trigger is like touching on a nerve or a part within us where it's like allowing that emotion to come to the surface. Um, Fascinating stuff. And so for me, going back to what I was saying about the relationship and my healing journey, so much of the compassion and forgiveness that I began to shift into was a result of like my own healing, which involved hypnotherapy and breath work to help me like get more into my body, get more in touch with my emotions, and start to like knock down the walls that were around my heart, which were very high and very well constructed. So yeah, it's been a journey for me. But that was, some of the first layers of like reasons why I ended up feeling like really grateful for that relationship, because as awful as it was at the time, and as much as it like kind of cemented those walls around my heart, because I saw that I needed to protect myself more and more. um Getting to move through the healing and the releasing process of those walls has been like one of the most rewarding experiences of my life that's really hard to put into words. And through it all, like I very quickly, once I began getting help for myself, I very quickly saw, I felt this passion that I didn't know was there, of wanting to help other people on their journeys as well. I started to see how my story of what I had experienced so far and me sharing that and what I'd learned was helpful for people to hear. And I still remember the first time someone told me that I was an inspiration to them. It like completely caught me off guard and was such an amazing compliment. And it was in that moment that I realized, like, oh my gosh, like I can actually help people with this. I can use my experience as a way to help other people on their journeys as well. Um, and so in the midst of, the last several years, trained to become a coach, and I got certified in hypnotherapy as well, because of how much those tools and those resources helped me in my journey. I believed in them so much that I wanted to incorporate them in a way that I could end up launching a business. And that's what started in 2021. I published my book, and I launched my business part time, and began to collect money for coaching my first few clients. And such a rewarding experience. And owning a business has been a whole other set of challenges and learning experiences for myself that I'll save for a different time. But I'm so grateful of for like all the awareness that I've gotten on my healing journey, because it has allowed me to see like how my relationship with money, as an example, has also been a direct reflection of my relationship with myself, and how I can keep kind of going deeper and deeper into myself, and the emotions and the traumas and the stuff from my past, and so that not only can my relationships with other people be thriving and amazing like they are today, but I can also transform my relationships and my experiences with money, with time, with my physical body, all sorts of elements to the everyday life that we have. And when I think about the like higher perspective of all of this, it's like I know I've said this a few times, but like I am so grateful for those 15 years of hardship, because without them, I don't believe that I would be experiencing the flip side of that I'm experiencing now, where the level of joy and peace that I'm able to tap into today is so different from what I experienced in the past. And I maybe wouldn't necessarily understand the level that I'm at now if I didn't have the contrast of what happened long ago. Um, and I'm now like so grateful for the wide range of what I've been able to experience in this human lifetime. Like I really feel like I've lived my life in such a full and rich way. And what I love is that, it's while day to day things might be challenging versus a more optimistic or more joyful state, like by and large, things are only getting better and better from here. Like I made that decision 5 years ago, that I was never looking back. I was never going back to a life that involved that kind of relationship or treating myself the way I did. Like I that was going to be in my past, and it has been in my past, and it's to a point now where it's like there is no going back in a lot of ways. Um, and so the idea that like things continue to get better and better, and I love that. And with that also comes me being able to go deeper and deeper into myself. And what that comes with is some deeper layers of grief, of sadness, of anger, of guilt, of loneliness, these emotions that I had kind of trapped inside myself for a very long time. And it's like an analogy that I often use in my work with clients and in videos like this is, if you think of our our minds, and our kind of our psyche, our awareness as like an iceberg, where there's 10% that's above the surface and there's 90% that's below. And the 10% represents our conscious mind, the thoughts that we're aware of, the things that we think about on a regular basis. And the 90% is all the stuff that's hidden inside us, the emotions, like I said, that become trapped inside us for years or decades. And even the more like mundane things like, when you're brushing your teeth, for example, you aren't necessarily thinking about every single tooth that you're on or like how much time to spend on each tooth. Or we've all probably had that experience where we're driving somewhere and we get to the location and don't even remember like the turns and the stoplights that we had on the way. There's so much that we've done time and time again that it's like second nature where we don't have to think about it. And there's some really cool stuff that can happen subconsciously, where we don't have to have our full focus on it. But the interesting thing is that subconscious thoughts also happen with stuff like, um, let's say you're at a restaurant and if things are tight financially, like if you're deciding between two things on the menu, you'd be like, oh, well, I need to save money, so I'm going to go for the cheaper option. And maybe the thought underneath that is like, I'm not worthy of the more expensive option, or it's just like an automatic thing where you go for the thing that maybe you don't even really want, when it comes down to it, because of the worthiness or the money scarcity stuff, the safety, the fear. Like there's all sorts of stuff that can be buried underneath that you may not even think or realize are present whenever you're simply making a choice on a menu. Um, and so, yeah, there's many, many layers to this, and I've been grateful for all of it. And grief actually has been such a gift in my experience in my life, where, like I said, for most of my life, I was kind of like a robot where I was very closed off from here down and very unemotional for the most part, unless I was triggered. Um, and I hadn't experienced a whole lot of grief in my life in terms of the loss of loved ones. I'd lost a few people, but they were people that I wasn't super close with. Um, my biggest experiences with grief had to do with pets. I had a number of different cats over the course of my lifetime, and having lived with them for several years, most of them, it was hard when each of them passed away. And in 2023, I had three major transitions, deaths that I experienced, of beings in my life. Two were the two cats whose photo I'm looking at now, a photo of them as kittens, because I got most of my cats as an adult as adults. But these two boys, Peachy and Joey, I got when they were 3 months old, and they both lived approximately 17 years. So they were with me through a lot of my life. I got them when I was 19, and they both passed away when I was 36. And they lived a lot of life with me. They sat next to me on the couch when I wrote my book. They were with me through most of my relationship with my ex-husband. Um, they they meant and still mean a whole lot to me. Um, and one of them passed away in February of 2023. The other one passed away in December of 2023. And the third passing that year was my ex-husband in October. So in between the two. So that was a year of loss and transition for me. And it was interesting how, like, with my ex-husband, I had a lot of emotions, different emotions come up. as is very common for people experiencing grief. And um, the thing that, for me, in my experience, I had already done quite a bit of grieving for him in our relationship in the 4 years leading up to his passing, um, where I had kind of grieved the potential of what I thought he could be and what I thought we could be. I had grieved what our relationship was. I had grieved, a lot of the things that had happened to me or happened for me in that experience that were harmful and were, challenging at times to heal from. And um, I had grieved, like, I'd kind of let go of I had such a strong desire that he would someday wake up and create happiness for himself. And I wished that so hard for him. And I still wanted that to happen for him, but I had kind of grieved and let go of the need for that to happen because the reality was that it didn't look like that was going to happen. Um, it looked like he was going to continue living a life that was really more of the same as what we experienced when we were together. Um, so because I had done a lot of grieving leading up to his passing, it only took me honestly about 5 days for me to move through what was pretty significant emotion. And like I said, a wide range of it. Um, but it was through that experience that the gratitude that I had already felt for him on such a deep level only got deeper. And I really felt this soul level connection with him where I had already begun to believe that for those of you watching, I don't know if you're familiar or believe in soul contracts. I do believe that before we come into this human existence, we have a contract or agreement with other people, other souls, in kind of the divine sense, where we will come down into these human bodies and we will play roles for each other to help the um, to help us learn and grow and to experience life in a certain way. And I very much believe that we had a very important soul contract with each other where we played these roles for each other. And I think we both played our parts very well. And leading up to his passing, I had already kind of had some conversations with him on a soul level of really thanking him for playing that role so well because of how much I learned from it and because of what that experience led me to. Like I came from a corporate background where I was doing work that was well paying and I liked elements of it, but it was not fulfilling work. And, you know, in addition to my own personal healing and like feeling so much better within myself, I also found and created a career path for myself that I feel so lit up by and like so passionate about. And it's funny now when I look at like astrology things and other areas, it's like everything points to me being a healer and a helper. And I wouldn't have known or discovered any of that if it weren't for this catalyst that led me to this journey of, self-awareness, self-discovery, self-love. Um, and so, when he did pass, that level of gratitude and that soul connection like just deepened so much more. And it was also a really important spirit experience from an emotional perspective. Like I said, there was a wide range that was happening. But because I was, just to be literal about it, like I was crying, sobbing, sobbing my guts out. And it was on the heels of like seeing opportunities for myself to open up and to tap into those things more and more instead of being so closed off, like really wanting to allow emotions to flow through me more. And this experience provided that for me. So, combined with the sadness and the anger and some guilt that were coming up for me and the grief, I also simultaneously felt this gratitude and this joy for being able to go there and to allow the sobbing to happen and to feel the release of that, like, although I had done quite a bit of grieving up until that point, I was able to go so much deeper into it. And like it, I, the words that are coming to me are like breath of fresh air. Like it was such a weight off of me, not only my thoughts and feelings of our relationship, but so much more beyond that of like my emotional experience in this human body. Um, So, yeah, and in the last like month or so, there's been some other pieces that have kind of clicked and some other pieces that I've been able to like move through and release. I had another soul level conversation with him the other day where I felt like I I released some of those final like unloving energies between us. And that felt so like freeing and complete. And I can tell that, there might be a little more to release at some point, but it feels like it's, 99% there where I'm at now. It's such a loving place of peace and compassion and gratitude for him and for our relationship. And I, it's hard to put into words like how grateful I am for all of it and what it has led to and what it's helped me create. And I know that if, 2019 Ted were watching this video, he'd be like, okay, like maybe that's possible, but also what the heck am I watching right now? um, so if you're someone who is either in the thick of a really challenging relationship or you're freshly out of it, um, I get how this can feel far reaching and out there and maybe even crazy. Um, and my invitation to you is to just keep going. Um, like keep getting the help that you're getting. I'm available for support as well. I'm a relationship coach and I have helped people quite a lot in healing from really challenging relationships, not only romantic ones, but also in their families, with friends, coworkers, all sorts of stuff, which all, ties back to your relationship with yourself. And I'm happy to share now that I'm almost 3 years into a relationship with an amazing man, who I love and adore so much. And like I also know that our relationship wouldn't be possible if each of us hadn't done sorry, I had a little interruption there. If each of us hadn't done the work on ourselves where we, became more aware of our patterns, had done our own kind of individual healing that then led us to a point where we then felt worthy, that going back to that worthiness piece of like knowing what we wanted and also feeling worthy of like, yeah, that's the kind of relationship that I want. And it's so funny energetically how it happened. Like it was right around that time that we like decided that for ourselves individually that we then matched on Tinder. And like you can't make that stuff up. And it's been such a breath of fresh air of like seeing what's possible in a relationship. Like we have so much in common in a lot of ways, and we're also different in the perfect ways as well, where we learn from each other and gain different perspectives from each other. And it continues to blow my mind and heart, how much love we feel for each other and how it only continues to get deeper and richer and more loving. I'm so grateful for it. So, yeah, and like I said, my career has been such a mind-blowing experience as well. Like I've found so much fulfillment and passion in what I do, and it has definitely come with its challenges, and some of which I'm still working through when it comes to financial abundance and things like that, which I'll save for another time. But I wanted to share the perspective of the level of gratitude that you can feel for a really challenging experience. And when we allow these things to be lessons for us, they can lead to such amazing stuff. Um, and I am really grateful to be sharing all of this with you here today. And if you have questions or you want to talk about um, your experience, get some feedback or get some guidance from me, I welcome that conversation. I'll be posting this video in various places. If you're catching this on YouTube, you can email me, ted@tedsmith.life, or you can comment on the video below. If you're seeing this video on social media, feel free to leave me a comment or a direct message, and be happy to have a conversation with you. Um, I hope this video, this share has been helpful for you in some way. I'd love to know how it's helpful. It's always helpful for me to hear, like, from my audience in what ways they're benefiting from the content that I provide. And yeah, I hope you have a great rest of your day, of your week. And I'm sending you so much love. So much love.